with this color of collodion. And that's what I really want to talk about, is just addressing that color of collodion and what it can produce as far as an image goes, the contrast, all that wonderful stuff. So if we get a couple of people in here, I'll go ahead and pour this plate. I think I have enough battery to do all of this. You can kind of watch this stuff from here. I'm going to flow the plate, and I'll just talk about some of my methodology here. Let me grab a marker. If I pour a puddle in the center of this plate about that big around, go A, B, C, and drain, I should have a really nice emulsion. I'll drain it off into my drain bottle here, and you'll see what I do. So let's peel this. This is anodized aluminum, of course, just as a kind of a test shot. I'm going up to CU Boulder Friday, and I'm just kind of testing my chemistry here. So here we go. Let's pour a plate here. Nice and clean. Big puddle in the middle here. Go slow and keep it as steady as you can. A, B, cap your bottles if you can do all that. C, over here, and D for drain. Kind of go slow. Roll your fingers up this side and start rocking that a little bit. I come up all the way like that right into my drain bottle there. I'll show you this. We'll just wick that off. There you go. You got a nice surface to work with. I'm going to go drop this into the dark room in the silver bath, and I'll be right back. I wish I could take you into the dark room, but I can't haul this laptop around. But let's talk about the color of this collodion. This is my mixture. It's got an iodide, a bromide in it, right? Thin it out with some solvents, alcohol and ether. And I always talk about the different color of collodion and what that means. So this is my favorite. This is not my favorite. In other words, it's a little too flat for me. You'll see this with natural light, north light. I can take you over here anyway. Let's do this. Welcome to my studio. Here's my setup that we're going to photograph here. That green bottle and the bones. This is diffused north window light right here. If you have my videos, you can see me working in this capacity, obviously. But for those of you that don't, hello, Pat. How you doing? For those of you that don't, I thought I'd offer a little bit of a insider's take on collodion, color of collodion, the range you can get out making positive images, and also the iodides play into making negatives as well, right? You need that good contrast, to build some density so you get a negative thick enough to print or dense enough to print. What I see mostly online nowadays is people overexposing on their positives, mostly overexposing, and it flattens everything out. The beautiful thing about this process, to my mind, is that you get an incredible tonal range. And I'm going to show you that here in just a minute after we make this photograph. I'll show you the plate right here. There's my buzzer. I'm going to go grab my plate. I'll bring it out and we'll make the exposure. Hold on. I'll be right back. I've got the plate loaded up here. I'm going to do about a 4-second exposure over there. Run in, I'll develop it, I'll bring it out, and I'll show it to you guys. Just hang tight. Are you doing live chats during the week now? I'm doing live chats whenever I can, actually, Pat. So if you see me fire up and you're interested in seeing what I'm doing, come on in, and I'll post this as well too. But I appreciate you guys coming in and checking it out if you can. So let me make this exposure real quick. Maybe I can turn it over that way. Can I turn it over that way? You get some idea of what I'm doing. Sorry about all the chemistry and bottles and all that junk, but yeah, something like that. Here we go. So I've already got this set up. You've seen what I'm doing here. I'm going to go ahead around a 5-second exposure or something like that. Let's see what we get here. Call the dark slide. Exposure in 3, 2, 1. Exposure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. Let's do that. Okay, guys. I'm going to run back into the dark room here. I'll flip you around. You'll see me come out with a plate here in just a second. About 30 seconds or so. This looks good. Hopefully I can show it to you here. Still anybody there? Yeah, we got a couple people in there. So here we go. That plate that I just did, that was a 5-second exposure. That window light, I need to reseal my plate holder here. See if I can show this to you. So what I'm trying to get at is the tonal range. I don't think that's really representing very well, but you get the idea. What I'm trying to show is a tonal range at bottle and bones there. The tonal range you can get out of this process is amazing. And I just don't see a lot of folks exploiting that very well. So what happens is you get people that overexpose. That's the #1 problem with this. You overexpose a plate, you lose all those subtle details. And granted, north window light is absolutely the best for anything you're doing. I have it on both sides here. You know, we can run plates and portraits and still lifes and all that stuff. All the work done in the Chemical Pictures 2019 is all the still lifes are done right here, just like I'm doing this. In fact, this is some material that some bones in a bottle that I found on a site. I photographed quite a bit. What I find interesting is the translation of colors, the depth, and the tonal range that you can get. It just really, it's amazing actually. But the first thing you need is the proper color of collodion, signifying, you know, what kind of range you're going to get. Second is the exposure, knowing how to expose the plate, because if you don't know how to expose the plate, you're going to either underexpose or overexpose, and generally you'll overexpose. Most people say, oh, it's very slow film and we got to really really hit it with some light. You'd be surprised, actually. I know I didn't wash this, but this is just a test plate anyway. I'm going to actually varnish it here. Ooh, I'm out of alcohol in there. Let's fill that up with alcohol, right? My little spirit lamp, and I've got a little bit of what I call denatured alcohol or cleaning alcohol. I don't use grain alcohol on this. It's too expensive. And do you know alcohol is the most expensive compound in this process, believe it or not? Because you use so much of it. It's in pretty much everything if you're making your raw chemistry. And those folks out there that are selling chemistry know that as well. That grain alcohol is expensive. So let's do this. Let's show you how I varnish these guys. My alcohol lamp, I have a little bit of varnish here. That's enough to get me by in my little varnish rack. First I'm going to do now, another thing I want to show you is how these brighten up when you dry them. It's another thing people always are kind of amazed with. What happens is they underexpose a little bit sometimes, and then they get about a stop or a stop and a half jump in brightness, and some people like it. That's steam. That's not burning the plate. That's the water evaporating from the plate. But watch how this just jumps right up. I got a little organic material at the top there. I need to reseal my holder. Look at how that's jumping up bright. Some people like it like this. Back in the day, you know, you'd have your portrait made, and the photographer would underexpose a little bit for whatever reason, and he dries it up, and oh no, I want that. Don't varnish it, because what happens when you varnish? You come back down to that wet color. Unless you're using that spun varnish or shellac varnish, or if you're filtering out kind of the color of the varnish. I like the color. I like when they come back down to the beautiful. Now watch when I varnish this here. That's nice and hot. My little test tube is going to hold it over my flame for just a second. All you want to do is take the chill off of that. You're not looking to heat that up necessarily. Slide that out of the way. You know, this is alcohol. Now I'm going to put the drip line down here at the bottom. So I'm going to turn it this way. I'm going to roll the varnish out, or pour the varnish out and roll it around on the plate here. You don't need much. That's plenty. There's no rhyme or reason. Just get it good and soaked into the collodion. That's the only thing you want to do here. You'll see when I'm finished with this, how it brings it down to that nice wet color. That's where I base all my exposures. That's where you want to judge your exposure. So I just let it drip, come to a slow drip, something like that. Stand it up, wick that off, away from your flame. Bring your flame back over, holding that plate this way. Ooh, I just stuck it in some stuff down there. Sorry about that. Ferrous sulfate. Holding it this way to bead that varnish up down here on this end again. I guess I could do it this way too so you can see it. I'm just going to build that up, wick that off. And then as the alcohol evaporates, you can get it closer to the flame. You do not want to catch this on fire, obviously. That little spirit lamp is hot, so it doesn't take a whole lot. You see that? I'll get a better shot. Let me go ahead and kind of finalize it. Now, of course, you got that beautiful lavender oil smell, that terpene called linalool that's just filling the air up in my studio right now, which is a really nice smell. A little better than ether, but I've got a nice ventilation system here. Ether doesn't hang around long. Let me see if I can show you that. So a nice varnished plate should be hot and sticky and glossy, and that's really, really nice there. So I'd rack this and call it good. There's a difference between drying and curing. This varnish will dry very fast. I mean, you know, like in 20 minutes. I'm going to roll that paper over. The varnish will dry in like 20 minutes. The problem is curing. What is curing? Curing is allowing, there's 5% water in that alcohol in the varnish, and you need to allow that to also evaporate or dissipate. Curing takes a longer time because it's actually kind of molecular. It's way down deep in there. And so if you live in a dry area like Colorado here, 2 days and this thing will be dried and cured. Obviously dried in 30 minutes and then cured in a couple of days. Oh, Corrado. Oh, hello. About the lavender oil for varnish, do you add it before or after filtering? I add it after filtering, actually. That's a very good question. By the way, great book, very useful. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate hearing those kind words. Pat says, do you judge exposure with wet plate the same you do with film? In other words, blown highlights for overexposure and filled in shadows for underexposure. Actually, for these, it's the other way around. It's hard to get your head around that because this is a positive. This is a direct positive. So I judge exposure. I expose for basically shadows. I expose to get the range. Let's put it that way. So let me see if I can say this. Now with negatives, that's what you do, right? Negatives, you have, if you're not dense enough, you don't have enough light striking the plate, you have to forego your highlights or forego your shadows if you want to find that mid-range, right? Remember the zone system kind of thing. This is all done by visual inspection. So depending on what you like, I personally like the tonal range you find in these, right? And that's not a very good light on this. It looks very different in person in some regards. I guess I could put it over in the light, but I judge what I'm looking for. If you could see this bottle right now, you'd see all the range from the highlight shadow over here to the shadow side. You saw the bouncer that I have up here. That's on that side. You'll see all the range in the bones. You'll see the black tablecloth that it's sitting on, all that stuff. I judge exposure by the age of my chemistry, what kind of collodion I am using, the type of optic that I'm using. Is it stop down? How fast is it? How the aperture, how wide is it? And obviously the light. The light's the most important of all of those. But once you understand your chemistry, your light, and your optics, off you go. You can do about anything you want. So that's basically, really what I wanted to come in and chat about is tonal range and how beautiful this works versus this. This wouldn't give me, let me put this down. This wouldn't give me the same range as this. Why is that? It's because this hasn't broken down as much iodide as this has. So this is more contrasty, a little slower ISO. This is a little more faster, but less contrast. I want contrast, both for my positives and especially for my negatives. And I think I've shown you guys plenty of negatives doing these live shows. And if you have my book, you can look in chapter 11. My new book covers all of that. Or if you got the old book, you can look at the negatives. But this is my new book, and chapter 11 right here. It's the biggest chapter, or chapter 12 is probably the biggest. That's pop prints. But chapter 11 talks about negatives. But here's what I want to talk to you about here. I want to talk to you about the color of your collodion. Sorry, let me find it. I think it's page 153. No, 116. Sorry. I thought it was page. Oh yeah, it is in the positive. Let's go back to positives. So if you have my new book, or it's in the old one as well. This is on page 53, not 153. That's what I'm talking about right there. So you have this little marriage between the collodion, the silver bath, the collodion and the silver bath. So here's your silver bath, and here's the color of your collodion. I have never understood why people keep their collodion in amber bottles. You've got to see the color of it. What is the age difference between those two collodions? That's a great question. This is about 4 weeks old. and this is about 2 weeks old. And I keep them out here in the light. It's not hot down here. It's, you know, it's 20 degrees Celsius, 68 degrees Fahrenheit. The light and heat will break the iodides down. What does iodide turn into when it's broken down? It turns into iodine. Let me show you an old, this is what I call a juicer. Look at my juicer. Look at how red that is. Why would I keep that around? Well, could I use this Collodion? Sure, I could use it. It'd probably be restricted to outdoors within the bright sunlight, but I can also add just a little bit to that to spark that up if I want, right? So I always have old red Collodion, always. People complain about that. That's my lifeblood, old red Collodion. So if you have my book, this is what I'm talking about right here. And that's probably the first thing you need to understand about this process is how does the Collodion, the salts really, the salts in the Collodion interact with the silver bath. What is double replacement? What happens when those two ions exchange and you get AgI and AgBr and you form halogens? This is what we're talking about when we talk about photography, right? We're talking about light sensitive material, film, emulsion, whatever you want to call it. So you can produce the types of images that you want to make with a great tonal range, the black blacks, the bright whites. And don't fool yourself. Collodion doesn't have white. This is silver. Let's talk about what that's made out of. This is the highlights in this image are pure metallic silver, right? That's what the iron in the developer does. It starts when you expose the plate, but the iron in the developer reduces those iodides, silver AgI, silver iodide, and silver bromide to the pure metallic state of silver. So the silver is, and that's why you back it with black. It's an underexposed negative. You back it with black, and the reflection, those crystals reflect different values of light. And I varnished it with gum sandrax, so I have a little tint in there to give it that kind of antique yellow, brown, you know, whatever you want to call it. I call it the memory color. The 4 words in my work are memory, identity, difference, and justice. And those 4 words support all the work I do. So the visual image, the quality of the image is really important to me, the color of it. I won't go into negatives today. And in fact, I'm 40% right now. But if you have any questions, let's see. I've noticed a mismatch in quantities for the Collodion mix in your book. You say 65, 120 in the video, and 80 and 80. Yep. So don't worry about that, Corrado. It's not a mismatch. It's 4. Either one works. I get a couple of emails about this a week. Either one works. The small batch, it's a more simple solution to getting to your solvents. Remember, what this has in it is alcohol, right? One of the solvents are alcohol, the other's ether. The alcohol is what we're most concerned about. The alcohol contains 5% water, or it should. That water will keep your plate, the emulsion, wet longer in dry environments. So here in Colorado, where I'm dealing with 10, 15, 20% humidity, I need a little boost in alcohol. Can I do it with a lower? Absolutely. Did it for years. I just found over time that people, especially beginning in the process, need a little longer time. So either one works. There's no, don't trip about solvents. I mean, you could actually, I won't say it publicly, but there's a lot of latitude with solvents. Number one, understand what the solvents are for. Ether is for adhesion, evaporation, and alcohol is for thinning or viscosity. Ether is too, but for viscosity. The key issue here, the only thing that will remain longer than the ethanol and the ether is the water in the ethanol. And you're using anhydrous ether, I hope. So you don't have any water in the ether. So what we're really talking about is the water. That's the only difference. Now, what happens when people mix their collodion, they tend to add a little too much water to their beaker to mix their cadmium and their bromides and iodides. That will show up on your plate as kind of crepey lines. And, you know, I can kind of see when a plate's got the collodion has too much water. But either one works fine. You can use 65 or 80. If you're in a dry environment, I say up that a little bit. Look, every time, and this is another thing, every time that I pour this collodion up off the plate into my drain bottle, I have to reconstitute this, right? Because the amount of ether, especially, and some alcohol is different in this bottle than this bottle. And I don't want to pour off my plate back into my pour bottle. Pretty soon I'll have a bunch of gummy, thick stuff. So I have to reconstitute the drain bottle with 10% ether and alcohol. So now we're right back up to 80 mils or so, whatever. You know, you can do the math on it. But don't trip about that. You have a lot of latitude there. And you also have a lot of latitude in your development. You actually have a lot of latitude in quite a bit of this stuff. But you need to understand how it works, and it'll make your life a lot easier. All right, guys, I'm going to call that good. I've got to get ready for this demo of the university, and I have a guy coming over here in a little bit. So if there's any more questions, absolutely, you're very welcome, Corrado. No problem. I'm happy to help. And good seeing you, Pat. Join in on the chat next time. I'll pop up and do a half hour here or there when I can. My Sundays have been actually swamped. I'm actually doing bladesmithing and blacksmithing classes now on the weekends a lot. I've got two young guys, 11 and 14, coming over Saturday. They're going to pound out a little 3-inch blade. I just made one this morning. And then Sunday, I got a blacksmith class. We're going to make sets of tongs and a hardy tool and all kinds of stuff. So I'm keeping busy. Photography is, I thought I've done my last workshop 2 weeks ago, but I'm not sure on that now. I may have some changes coming. I thought I was going to go into semi-retirement next year, but that may change. You're very welcome, Pat. Thank you for coming in. Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. You know what? You guys make all this happen for me. Your support, your good words, your kind words, it's just awesome. And so don't be afraid to reach out. You spend your time and money with me. Don't be afraid to reach out and ask me questions. If you have technical issues, if you see me pop up here live, join in and ask me questions, because I'm happy to answer and help with anything I can. So thank you very much, guys. I'm degloving, and I'm going to call that good. Thanks for joining in on the Studio Q live show, and I will see you next time. I hope to do this. I'll just pop in when I can, and I'll probably do that a couple of times in the next week or so. So I won't be on the weekend. It'll be one of the other days, and I'm also going to my property on Monday or Tuesday. So I don't know. We'll figure it out. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it. Have a great day, evening, wherever you're at. Ciao.